Welcome to Resell Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 405, and this is a themed episode.
Yeah, and this is our 4th of July week, right? So happy early 4th of July to all of you on our side of the pond, and if you're on the other side of the pond, too bad.
Careful,
so sad.
Careful.
Yeah. But anyways, happy Independence Day, happy 4th of July coming up here. So hopefully everyone's enjoying their time. Maybe got some plans to do some grilling and some fireworks tomorrow. But today we're going to be talking about something I think that's actually really timely for this. Is we're talking about reselling while traveling. Like, this is the time of the year where a lot of people are traveling. And one of the things that I heard a while back, and it was so true, was like we were conditioned as like kids to think the summertime is the best time of the year because that's the time you're off from school. But then as you get older, you start to realize like actually like summer kind of sucks.
Really?
But it sucks for, resellers. It's like a slow time. It's really hot. Like if there's another time of the year, like the fall, I would much rather be outside during the fall than during the summer.
That's because you're in
spring
Texas.
during the summer. But pretty much, but that's most of the country, right? Like summertime is like, it's hot, it's humid, but it's also the time a lot of people travel because their kids are in school and they're out, right? Like that break time is travel time. And reselling is one of those things that you don't have to completely stop doing while you're on travel, while you're on vacation. And so today we're going to be talking about what it looks like, some tips and tricks for reselling while you're traveling, because there's a lot of ways. I mean, there's some people who are able to completely pay their travels because of reselling, maybe reselling before to save up for a vacation, or reselling during a trip to completely pay for the trip. So I'm excited to talk about reselling and traveling today.
Yeah, and this was actually, great time for me too, because I just went through this. And so I thought, you know what? We haven't talked about this. I don't think ever. Maybe we talked about it a long time ago. Maybe.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a long time. And I just did a live. So if you guys missed the live, I just focus on time away on eBay and how to set that up and what's going on. We'll talk about that a little bit here. But, if you want to listen to two people talk about it and more in depth, we're going to be talking about it here. So the first thing is, the question is, do you sell or not sell while you're on the road, right? People have different perspectives, particularly on eBay. eBay, it's not as passive as on Amazon. Like if you do Amazon and you ship out all your FBA shipments before you head off on vacation, then you're good to go. You don't have to do anything. You might have to answer a message here or there, but the Amazon warehouse will take care of everything. And I remember the good old days when I used to do a ton of Amazon. I loved it. Like I'd be making several $100s a day and I wouldn't have to pack or ship anything, but I did have to do a lot of legwork up front. Now, with eBay, you have two options when you're time away. You can either, one, choose not to have any sales for up to 30 days, which I'm not a big fan of, and I'll explain a little bit why. Or you can choose to put your store up to 15 days and continue with sales. So that it gives you those two options.
Yeah, and honestly, like that's a for most people for travel, that's going to be enough, right? Because you figure you got the day before you start, you got a little bit of time when you get back, especially if you're handling time, because you can do the 15 days of sales and then also extend your handling time by a day or two. And then that would give you, it can kind of extend it out even further, right? So if you know, hey, I'm going to be back on the 15th day, and if I get a bunch of sales, I'm going to struggle with getting all these packed, then you can kind of combine the two, right? Like you can say, okay, 15 days of the time away, still accepting sales, and then also extend your shipping time by a day. So instead of same day or next day, maybe do 2-day shipping. That way, when you get back, it gives you a little bit of leeway potentially with some of those sales.
Yeah, I strongly encourage people to just keep having the sales running. It's a wonderful feeling when you go on vacation and you come home and you have, and not saying the wonderful feeling is all the packaging you have to do, but the fact that you have all this money that constantly is being deposited via eBay. Now, that's if you do daily. If you do weekly, maybe you'll get it. But it's great. It's great, when sometimes you end up selling more than you actually spend while you're on the road and while you're traveling. It's a great feeling. And so I encourage you to do that. I mean, it doesn't hurt. eBay is one of those things that you can make money 24 hours a day, even if you're not on vacation. That's the beauty of eBay, is that you can make sales at 1 a.m, 3 a.m, which is odd to me because I really don't make those sales anymore. I used to wake up and have like a ton of sales from, middle of the night. That doesn't happen anymore. I'm not sure, but
yeah. Well, and the other thing too is like when you're away like that, it's not just nice financially to be able to make that money, but also psychologically, right? Like if you if you're saying like, okay, I'm going to take a break, I need to take a week off, because usually it's not 15 days. Like most people aren't going for 15 days. That's a 2 week. That's That's like most people, more than most people get an entire year.
Unless you're staying with family or something. But if you're going to like a resort or something, like that's a tough one.
Yeah. Usually like 5-day cruise plus a couple of days travel here and there. So like usually a week or a little over a week is more than enough. But psychologically, if you're not getting any sales while you're gone, not only are you thinking, am I missing out on like this time away that I'm not working, but now I'm missing out on money too. And so that can be a hit psychologically for you, make you not enjoy the time you're away. Whereas if you're still getting some sales, let's say you're on your cruise, you connect to Wi-Fi, next thing you know, you're like, oh, look, there's a sale. Oh, that was a good sale. So you still get that like, it's not as negative of a hit to you of like, man, I'm taking time away from my work that I'm doing, but you're still getting that the sales coming through, which can be a huge blessing for you. And one of the things that you might want to do too while you're away is do some listing. Now, you're not going to be able to unless you're sourcing while you're on travel, which is definitely something we're going to talk about. It's a very useful thing to do, but a lot of times you're going to have to rely on work you do ahead of time. You're going to have to kind of preload, front load some of that work, which is fine because as resellers, we know that anyways. Like we're getting paid for work we did a while back, right? I sourced this stuff, I listed it a while back, now it's sold. And the same thing is true. You want to keep that algorithm going. You want to keep your store active. So one of the things you can do is before you go on vacation, work through one of those death piles of yours, right? You're going to feel even better while you're traveling if you don't have that death pile hanging over your head. Plus, you can have a whole bunch of drafts ready to go. Now, anecdotally, a lot of us have experienced that having just one giant dump of listings. If I did 50 or 60 listings in one day and then nothing for a couple of weeks, it's not going to be as effective for my store as if I'm listing 5 or 6 items a day for the next 10 days. So having those drafts ready to go and listing them while you're gone is going to be a quick thing to do. You're on vacation, boom, make it go live, make it go live, make it go live. It keeps your store moving, and it's probably going to even trigger more sales even though you're on that time away.
No, agreed. And again, you can make it as basic as possible, right? Where you don't put a lot of info, or you can just make it as simple as all you have to do is hit send, right? Or make the listing go live and it's good to go. It's up to you. It all depends. If it's one of those trips, those vacations where, you don't want to spend any time away from your family, maybe you're going to be in a hotel room with them the entire time. So you're not really going to have the time to yourself. Or maybe it is. You're on one of those cruises where like there's entertainment for the kids and, there's entertainment for your spouse and you, and well, hopefully you're not going, hey, hon, I gotta go do some listing. Like that would probably not be a good thing. But if you have the ability to get away, maybe you don't have to do as much work up front and you're able to do that work. I tend to, when I travel, even back in the day, when I was married, I would make drafts enough where I could just make them go live and I could do like 10 to 20 listings in like 30 minutes, right? I did a lot of the legwork up front. Real quick though, I want to rewind a little bit back about why choosing to stay, keep having sales where you're gone. Give an example. Last year, I was away. I was on a college trip with my son visiting colleges in the Midwest, and it was during the Masters tournament. And during that Masters tournament, I had a Masters jacket. It was one that was created during the rookie year of Tiger Woods in 1997. And had I not had sales turned on, I don't think I would have had that $500 sale, right? Because it was right in that moment that somebody was like, oh, the Masters is on. I really want to get this jacket. And they bought it. I remember when they were messaging me and they're like, hey, I know you're on vacation, but when can you ship it? And I said, well, I'm only out for another 2-3 days. I'll be able to ship it. Had that option not been there, they may have skipped it and I would have missed out on that sale. So you never know when people are looking. That's another reason to keep sales on. Now, going back to this idea of drafts. Yeah, definitely have drafts ready. And the other thing is make sure you are taking offers. And I explained this in the live a little bit. This may mean even taking lower offers than you're used to. So I would say if you're on social media, don't announce when you're going on vacation, because if people know your story, you're going to get a bunch of low offers. I think I've actually had that happen to me before where people knew I was going away somewhere and I keep getting all these low offers and I'm like, this is kind of weird.
And honestly, it's not a good idea anyways to let people know you're on vacation. I typically, even on the podcast, it's usually after I'm back. Even if, because we'll pre-record some stuff, we'll say like, hey, next week I'm going to, typically by that point, the trip has already happened, right? Because even on social media, like one of the things you don't want to do is typically blast that you're not home, just for the safety of your house, right? If everybody all of a sudden knows you're not home, that could be some potential issues. But yeah, same thing is if you're running sales like that, you want to get or accepting a lot of offers, you want to get those. But if you let everybody know, hey, I'm really desperate right now, so I'm going to be putting my store really low, hey, you might be bombarded in a negative way, and that might not help you out.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It is funny to me because I thought about this. You know, I recently traveled and I went sourcing. I was in Indiana and I went to garage sales. And I usually on Saturdays, I always post my garage sale finds and everything that happens. But I chose not to on that Saturday. Not that I think anything would happen. And the reality is, I always think about if anybody were to break into my home, they're going to look at all this thrifted stuff and be like, what did we get ourselves into, and just walk away. Because there's really nothing of great value here at all. Okay. I mean, think about it like looking through 20 totes of used shoes. Right now, if you're like a sneakerhead and you have a bunch of Jordans and stuff, that's a whole different story. Right. But somebody like me that's an everything seller, I'm sure somebody would walk in and go like, why is there a Mickey inflatable? And then why is there this new wave over here? And why is there a random guitar? And I'm not really understanding these Mickey figurines that are next to the duck decoys, right? People would be completely lost. But I would say, yeah, that's a great idea. I would even say on social media, I used to post when exactly when I would go to garage sales, where I was going. And I think it created some competition for me. That's why I don't post until after I go in San Diego, just because I don't want to create that. So that's a great point. That wasn't even what we were going to discuss today. Yeah, but I wouldn't blast that you're going on vacation, especially if your inventory is where you live. So offers, okay? I would say take as many offers as possible. You know, because people are going to look and they're going to see that you're away for a little while, and they may go, you know what? I don't want to wait that long for this item, but if they accept this price, I can wait a little bit, right? Everybody's willing to wait for a deal, right? You know, growing up, one of the worst things about getting connections and getting hooked up, whether it was a paint job in your car, whether it was somebody working on your brakes, was that anytime you had a connection, it always took time. Right? It wasn't like you could just go somewhere and it would get done in hours or in a few days. It's always like, oh, you know, my in Spanish would be like my tío or my uncle or whatever. Like he'll get it done, but you know, it might be a few days because it's not their primary thing. And so I think that's the same thing with reselling, is that a lot of people are willing to wait for their items to get shipped out if they're able to get things at a lower cost. And so if you get a decent offer, you know, people hold out because what are their options? You decline it, and then they go, you know what? All right, well, this person's going to ship it out to me faster. I'm willing to pay an extra $10 for this item, right? You don't want to lose out on those sales while you're on the road.
And one of the ways you can really do that is make sure you're communicating with the buyers, right? So one of the things that's important, especially when you get a sale like that, is not everybody pays attention, right? That when something is going to be shipped to them. So they might buy something when you're on your time away. It might still be 10 days before that item's being shipped out. And so if you just think, yeah, well, they agreed to this, they're going to accept this shipment when I send it, and then all of a sudden here comes that time, you send it out, they're upset, you get a negative feedback as how slow shipping was, and it just is not worth it. Even if then you're dealing with the fighting it of like, well, that was the arranged time and they knew. So it's always a good idea just to message the buyer and say, hey, thank you so much. I appreciate your business. I'm currently away and we'll be able to ship at this date. Is this okay with you? Do you want to, I mean, you don't need, just saying that, like this item will be shipped out on this date, right? That's enough. And then if they're uncomfortable with it, they might message you back and say, well, I thought this would get here sooner. Then at that point, you can offer to cancel the order if it comes down to that. But usually you don't want to right off the bat say, do you want me to cancel this? This isn't going out for 10 days. But just let them know, like, hey, thank you so much for your offer. I'm currently away, and according to my policies or the item will be shipped out on this date. That way they know there's no shock, there's no surprise. And if you get like a really, grouchy customer, and they're frustrated, they're angry, that's the kind of person you want to go ahead and just cancel, right? When they're ready, if they want to cancel, you're going to be happy to cancel it. You might be bummed you missed that sale, but then you're not dealing with negative feedback. You're not dealing with any kind of complaints from a customer. And again, most of the time people are going to be okay with that. And again, they might even be happy. They might say, oh, you know what? I need this for an upcoming event. or I need this a little bit sooner because it's a gift, so go ahead and cancel. And again, it's better to have a customer who's going to be happy than one that's going to be upset and reaching out to you to cancel 3 days from now when they realize it hasn't shipped out yet.
Yeah, and remember, the easiest way to get this set up on eBay is on Time Away. If you go to stores and Seller Hub and you go to Time Away, you can do an auto message, and it'll reply. And I actually would say, if you have the auto message on, don't contact anybody. Don't make it a bigger deal than it is. You don't want to stir the pot. If people got the auto message, they're like, oh, all right. Because if people already got the auto message and they haven't messaged you, that means they're fine. But if you add another message on top of that, that can come across as concerning. And so you don't want to do that. I mean, I've had some really nice items sell while I've been away, and I'm like, I don't want to disturb the sale. I'm just going to let it slide. Obviously, the person saw this because eBay does have a banner. It does say, seller is away. And so just be aware of that. Now, this is something that some people may disagree, but I say you should probably run a deeper sale because, you want to attract more buyers. You want to get as many sales as possible. And so if you're not running any kind of sale and you're away, things might go as usual. But if it says that you're away, they make, again, it goes to the price principle. It goes to the idea that they're like, oh, this person's away, but there's no discount. There's no sale. So if you run a deeper sale, that'll attract more people. More people are going to be willing to buy. So, whatever that deeper sale means to you. For some people, that may mean 20%. It may mean 30%. For others, it may mean 50 or 60%. Run the deeper sale that works for you. And do remember, I've shared this before. Excuse me. According to eBay, sales are only effective if they're 15% or more. They say that anything less doesn't really help too much. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think one of the things that we might be kind of missing while we're on this is there is going to be that moment of you're coming back and then you're going to have to pay the piper, right? You're going to have to ship all those items that sell. And so there's a give and take. There's a balance there. You may be at a place where you're like, hey, if I maintain my normal level of sales, or if I actually end up with a little bit less while I'm gone, that's okay. Because I don't want to come home from my travel, especially because sometimes, like, we've been talking a lot, like, hey, you're going on vacation, you're going on a cruise, but like maybe you're like, hey, there was a death in the family, I've got to travel to another state for a funeral, I'm going to be driving there, it's going to be like 6 days, I'm gone, something like that. You might not be at a place where you want to shut your store down. You want to keep things going. You still got to make a living, but you also don't want to come back from that. Maybe you got to go to work the next day, and then you also have 40 items to ship out because you went way too deep on sale. So you got to take it case by case. Good point. If you're at a place where you're like, hey, I want to make more sales, and the reason we say run sales isn't because we're expecting that you're going to get more while you're away. Typically, from most people I talk to, when you're gone, your sales are going to dip some. Like, I think just statistically, even if a lot of people are okay with waiting for items, there's going to be at least a large percentage of people who they're not going to want to wait, right? That whatever it is they're wanting to get, unless your sale is so good that you're basically giving your item away. So if you're going to do that, then you might as well do that on a regular day when you're not away anyway. So you kind of got to figure out what works best for you. If you're in a place where, hey, I'm gone and I know that my sales are going to drop by maybe 50% for the next week, maybe running those deeper sales while you're away just so that you can maintain that same weekly. Because I mean, some of us, that's how we're running our eBay store, right? Like, I need to make X dollar each week in order to pay my bills and do all the things I need to do. And so if you're going to be gone for a week, you're going to see a dip in those sales. So maybe you're willing to eat the price a little bit and drop and run deeper sales so that you still meet that dollar amount.
That's such a great point. I'm just thinking about traveling in the good times, but sometimes you got to travel and things are kind of rough. The last thing you want is to run a deep sale. You get all these sales and you have to decompress from your trip, and the last thing you want to do is ship. So that's a very good point. Hey, before we move on, I want to talk about My Reseller Genie. And a lot of you are like, I'm done with taxes. It's over. I already got my refund. Why do I have to stress about it? Here's the thing. You want to have everything ready to go for Q4, right? It's only around the corner, and people are buying even earlier. People are buying in Q3. What My Reseller Genie is software made by resellers for resellers that allows you to track your profit and loss, allows you to import all your data from eBay and from Poshmark, all your shipping fees, your ad fees, your final value fees, all those items. So then when it's time for your taxes, you have that all that information at a click of a button. So make sure you get ready for that now in the summer, so you're not stressing about it later. You can actually have it run on autopilot. I actually have it run on autopilot. I always wonder what Paul and Faith think about my reseller Genie, because I don't touch, like, I haven't even been on it for like 2 months, because I'm like, hey, I trust that the software is running how it should, and I don't really have to worry about it. And so you want to have that ability. So if you haven't yet, check out my reseller Genie. Go to the link below and use our code Pure Hustle, and you'll get 15% off the first month. Again, use our code Pure Hustle, get 15% off the first month of my reseller Genie.
Yeah.
All right, I'm interested in what you think here about sourcing, because
I mean, sourcing on a trip is a ton of fun. Now, again, it's going to be dependent, right? You're going on a cruise, you're probably not going to have as much sourcing opportunities, but a lot of times, a lot of us will do, cross-state or cross-country trips where you're doing quite a bit of traveling. This is your chance to check out new places, right? A lot of times you get stuck in your little bubble of thrift stores. Maybe this thrift store is good, but most of the thrift stores are bad, or this one. The nice thing is when you're traveling, you get the opportunity to walk into different thrift stores. And one of the things we talk about a lot is every thrift store has a weakness, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not the whole store has a weakness, but maybe certain days, certain employees aren't pricing things correctly, or they're trying to move certain items. And so you get to find new places and maybe find a niche or something you don't normally get to pick up, because another store is pricing them at a price that you can actually pick up the items and be profitable. So one of the tips and tricks that I have, and I think is really a good idea, is try not to just go to Goodwill. Right? Goodwill is going to be Goodwill pretty much anywhere you go.
I got
Salvation Army.
Done.
Yeah. But Salvation Army is going to be mostly Salvation Army no matter where you go. Now, there's going to be some different items. If you're in Utah, you probably have a higher chance of finding like North Face or Patagonia or like that type of stuff. If you're in San Diego, you're probably going to find more like surf type stuff. If you're different places will have its own thing. So there will be variance depending on where you are regionally. But going to the non-chain stores, I think is going to be optimal for you, or going to like the smaller chains, right? Because they're the national big chains. And then there are thrift stores that again might be a chain, but only for like a small region of a state. You're probably going to do much better at mom and pop shops or at smaller thrift stores, hole in the wall thrift stores. Especially as you're traveling, if you end up in a smaller town while you're traveling, maybe you're just driving through, stop for 15-20 minutes and check out a small town thrift store, because there's probably not a lot of reselling competition there. You could probably get some cool items, and you get to see different types of things. So I would definitely say, don't just go to Salvation Army. Don't just go to Goodwill. Go check out the smaller thrift stores. And a lot of times, I don't use Maps, or I don't know if it's called Maps. I don't use the Apple Map, but I use Google Maps.
I use Google Maps, yeah.
So when you're going somewhere, you can put search along route, and you can kind of see, maybe I'm driving 4 hours today before I stop for my hotel. So search along route, and then you can find as you go, like, oh, there's like, I'm going to pass like 13 thrift stores during this 4 hours, and one of them's only 2 minutes out of the way. One of them's 4 minutes out of the way. And you can kind of just plan that in, get some extra stops, go use the restroom, go into a thrift store, and break up that long drive. And I know some of us just want to just barrel through, but again, it can be really cool, especially there's nothing like stopping into a little thrift store, finding an item you're going to be able to sell for $200, and the next time you fill up gas, you're like, that was free. And then the next time you walk in to get dinner with your family, you're like, that was free, just because you picked up one item at a thrift store. So definitely stop and check them out.
Yeah, it's interesting that you and I are very aligned on this, because it's true. Goodwill and Salvation Army, I would say now, are pretty much the same across the board. Now, I do get people every once in a while in the comments will say, oh, my Goodwill is way cheaper, or I'm able to find deals. And yes, you will always find deals. But to me, I think there's something psychological that happens when you've been sourcing at the thrift for several years, at least in San Diego. Like, we never set foot in Goodwills. Hardly ever will I go into Salvation Army. Salvation Army isn't bad. I would say the prices are still pretty good. But just because I know Salvation Army is also moving their stuff online, right? So it's harder to find things. And across the board, I find that when I go to, let's say, a Goodwill, like this last time I went to a Goodwill on Salvation Army when I was out in Indiana. And something happens to me when I start looking at stuff and it's the same price as it is in California. And I go, you know what? It's probably the same junk too. Right. So I start finding like Target brands and Walmart brands. And after a while, I'm like, this is not worth it. And so you kind of get the sinking feeling that it's the same thing. And you actually stop looking. There may be items there, but I know for me, it gets me to stop. But when I go to a place that I've never been to before, that's not a chain store, especially the ones where like not everything is labeled or like there's like piles of stuff, right? Because you get so much stuff and you have to like sift through it and you have to go at the bottom of a toe and find stuff. Those places, I love sourcing those places. And I find a lot of amazing stuff. This last trip, I found a lot of baseball bats. One that was worth like $200, just because, you know, they were just, it was like in the middle of some aisle of bunch of toys that they weren't able to get through, and they just dropped everything off there. Like, you don't know what kind of deals you're going to find at those non-chain stores. But, you know, at the chain stores, you know, they've picked through everything. You know, they've sorted through everything. It's going to Shop Goodwill. It's going to whatever, you know, online store they have. But if you go to these, you know, out of the way, or maybe they're, you know, just maybe they're a chain, but it's only a chain to like that region, right? So for example, I know like in Utah, I also go to the Deseret Industry stores because those are particular to Utah, right? And so if I find good prices at one and I find good items at one, chances are it's probably on a lot of them. Savers is one of those that's like hit or miss. We actually have Savers now in California, and it's terrible. To me, it's terrible. Every time I go, the closest one to me is about an hour and a half away, so I don't drive that far. But, you know, when I go to Savers, like let's say in Arizona, it depends on which side of Arizona. Sometimes there's good deals. So you definitely got to go hit or miss, but it is worth it to you to go non-chain when you source at those thrifts.
And there's also like ARC thrift stores, another one that I've seen a lot in like Colorado. So let us know in the chat below. I'd be interested to know like what's your, of the chains, maybe like a regional local chain, like what's your favorite thrift store chain? Like what's the thrift store chain that you do best at? Let us know in the comments below. That'd be kind of cool, just for us to kind of get a pulse of where people are shopping that aren't the mom and pop shops.
Agreed. Now, this next one, I don't know. I wonder what people think. I wonder what Mike thinks. I like looking at local deals and garage sales in the region. Now, usually this is for a trip where you're like staying with family or friends. It's kind of one of those trips where you're just hanging out with people. It's not like you're going to, you know, Disneyland one day and you're going to California Adventure, you're going to Busch Gardens, you know, you're in Orlando, Florida. Like, it's not one of those trips. It's one of those where you're just hanging out with people. And so it doesn't hurt. I like looking at local deals because what I find is what I'm looking for is not necessarily what people in that area are looking for, right? They don't see that value. Right. And so, for example, one time I was in Wisconsin and somebody had a bunch of Nintendo Powers and a bunch of Ninja Turtles. And this listing had been around for like 40 something days. And I guess no one was looking for it. And I went and I sourced it. I remember driving through blizzard conditions and getting there. And I want to say I paid $90 or $100 on it. And I ended up picking a bunch of Nintendo Powers that had Pokemon cards in them, which I made, you know, $200-$300 on. And I also picked up a bunch of Ninja Turtles that I made some money on. And so you never know. Now, it also gives you a good contrast. Like in San Diego, when I go under, let's say, the video game section, there's like 180 listings. When I was in Indiana, I think the area I was in, there was like 12. Right. So it gives you a perspective that like if there's resellers in the area, everybody wants those. Now, the garage sales, I think it also gives you an advantage in the sense that it's kind of the same deal with going to a non-chain store where you're not accustomed to certain things. Like it may be different. So when I've gone to garage sales in other parts of the country, you know, I didn't realize in the Midwest, like they start on Thursdays. Right. And when I went on Thursdays, it was actually great because a lot of people didn't necessarily bring stuff out because they knew that they were going to do a garage sale on Friday and on Saturday. And most people, when I was out there, weren't really asking, like, do you have anything in the back? Have you not brought anything out? And I was able to get a lot of good stuff. Actually, this last time around, I was actually able to get a lot of good stuff. So it doesn't hurt to visit. And again, depending where you're at, like things were kind of the same in price, but you know, in certain parts of the country, they're not as bothered by haggling as in other parts. Like I find in San Diego, like a lot of people don't want to haggle. At least that's been my experience. But like in other parts, like in the Midwest, people are like, fine, I just want to get rid of stuff. It all depends. But you know, it doesn't hurt because again, you may find stuff that you can't find in your own area also. For example, one more, I'm not trying to kill markets, but in the Midwest, back when I was sourcing a lot of Harley, I would find all kinds of Harley Davidson stuff. Like it was crazy. All the time I would find Harley Davidson. Where here in California, there's not much of it around. At least that's been my experience in the last few years. It's kind of dipped a little bit. So I definitely encourage you, check out those local deals, check out those garage sales.
Yeah, and while you're away and while you're doing that, you know, if you're on a flight, if you took a flight somewhere, it can be a little bit challenging to get those items back, right? You might be thinking, I only have one suitcase, or I don't have room for certain items, and it certainly can limit what you're picking up. We have no problem when we're going to garage sales, you know, in our local town, filling up our entire trunk. Yeah. That's not always going to be feasible if you're on a trip. Now, I did take one, like cross country. I went halfway across the country, and I brought a big trailer with me, and I filled that thing up at thrift stores along the way. So it sometimes works, right? Sometimes you've got a car. You can do a few things like, you know, if you've got a car with a roof rack, maybe you just like, you know, have a bag that, you know, is empty, a big bag, a rooftop bag that you just fill up with as you go. But you got to be cautious of the things you're picking up. You're probably going to want to pick up smaller things. Now, one thing that is an option is if you're picking up, you could tell yourself, I'm just going to stop at some thrift stores, pick up a handful of items, and you're probably not picking up the just normal bread and butter stuff, right? Unless you've got a ton of space in your vehicle. You're probably not picking up stuff you're going to sell and make $10, $20, $30 on. But if you find something you can make $300, $400 on, it's definitely feasible and an option just to ship it back to your house, right? Like get a box, go to Home Depot, go to Walmart, pick up a medium-sized box. You can fit a lot of stuff in it. Like if you've ever done a move, you can actually get a lot of stuff in a box. And if you're spending $15, $20, $30, you know, you're using pirate ship to ship that back to your house, it could definitely be worth it. If you're spending, even if it costs you $30 to ship a big box back to your house, but you've got $1,000 worth of profit in it, that's a no-brainer. And you don't have to worry about, oh, I'm not going to be able to get this on an airplane. I'm not going to be able to get this. You know, you've talked about putting like baseball bats into your suitcase.
Yeah, that was my last difficulty. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you have that option. Sometimes you have an extra suitcase or some space in your suitcase. But sometimes you don't, right? Sometimes you don't. You go on a work trip or something and you just flew on a plane. You stopped somewhere while you were gone. Again, you're going to have to use your judgment. Is it worth it? But a lot of times it's not a bad idea to just pick up a little box, fill it up with whatever you picked up, and ship it back to your house. That is an option. But you got to think about that. Think about, you know, if I'm here, I'm local, I don't mind picking up something that's kind of big, cumbersome. If I know it'll sell, if it takes a little bit and it takes up a little space in my house. But if I don't have a lot of room, like I don't know when the last time you did a big road trip with like a bunch of kids in the car, but they take up a lot of space, right? Like yeah. I have to bring a stroller and a pack and play and like a little mini bed for one of my kids. Like I have to fill up my whole trunk with stuff, so I don't have the room. That's when something like a roof rack can be really helpful, or like I said, filling up a box and shipping it back.
Yeah, it was crazy this last time. I had about 10 baseball bats, and luckily my luggage, I was able to contort it in a way where I was able to fit them in. My most expensive bat, I was worried because that's the one that really didn't fit, but I was able, you know, on luggage when you're able to like unzip something and it makes it like a little bit wider or whatever, I was able to do that. Now, whenever I fly on business or when I know I'm going to go sourcing, I fly Southwest. We're not sponsored by Southwest. You can sponsor a Southwest if you like. That'd be pretty awesome. But you get 2 free bags, right? As long as they've reached the weight limit. And so I love it when I'm on business trips because, you know, usually whatever I need to wear and pack, like it takes up maybe, I don't know, a quarter of the space on one of the suitcases. But if I got that 2 free luggage, like I can source a lot of stuff, and I can, you know, make money while I'm working. So
yeah, ship an empty suitcase, like put it in the airplane with you.
Yeah, no, that's what I did this last time, and I was able to carry a lot of stuff. The bats were a little weighty, but you know, it all ended up working. I was able to transport stuff, and it's crazy because, you know, if you're in a hotel and you have a business, there's like a business section, you can print out the labels right there. Right, the only problem is going to be is having the tape and having the box, right? And if it's valuable, maybe you need to pick up some bubble wrap. But chances are, if it's something like that's gonna break, you're probably not gonna want to ship it back. I don't think I've ever shipped back anything that was breakable, but I have shipped out boxes back of inventory, and it's been pretty easy. So there you go. Hey, before we move on, the beauty of traveling too is, and being on the Discord, is the fact that you can be on this, you can be on the Discord, and in the Discord, you are picking up tips, and maybe those tips will help you out while you're out traveling. And you're like, oh, I never thought about this item, and somebody just mentioned that on Discord. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, is if you help support us on Patreon for $5.55 a month, that gives you access to the Pure Hustle podcast community in the Discord, where we have a lot of resellers. We have experienced resellers. We have sellers that are brand new. We have Amazon resellers, retail arbitrage, vintage, people that do records, clothing, like all kinds. A lot of great information. Some of our hustles of the week that we're going to talk about today come from our Discord. So if you want to help support Pure Hustle Podcast, sign up patreon.com/Pure Hustle Podcast for $5.55 a month, and it'll definitely benefit you. $5.55 a month. Like, think about that. Now, McDonald's does have us beat now because they have those new meals. Did you see those new McDonald's meals?
Yeah, it's only like a limited time though, isn't it?
But they're garbage too. It's like somebody said, if you use like the app and you use like the offers that are on there, you actually get it cheaper than for the meal.
That's crazy. I was talking with some people at work the other day about McDonald's. I don't typically ever eat there, but I remember as a kid they had, I think one day it was 20-cent hamburgers or 29-cent hamburgers, and then they had like 39-cent cheeseburgers.
Yeah,
29-cent one day, 30. And I was talking, there was a younger guy at the table, and he's like, man, that must have been forever ago. And I was like, no, I was in like junior high, like at the time, like, and he's like, what was that, like 20 some years ago? And I'm like, no. And I'm like, oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm old now. Like, but yeah, there was a time when it was definitely cheaper, but not so much anymore. That's for sure.
No, I don't. Well, okay, I just gonna land here for a moment. So when I was in college, steak, egg, and cheese bagel was like the thing. Like my buddies and I, we would all get in the car early in the morning, go out. And it was only like, I think it was like only like $1 or $2. Now it's like $10. Right, but if you use the app right now, I think it's like $4 or something. But it's just it's crazy. So what I'm saying is, think about it. Like, helping us out on Patreon is even cheaper than just getting a meal at McDonald's. How crazy is that?
And the content you'll get out of there. Yeah. I mean, our Discord has been amazing. That's for sure.
It has been.
All right, you ready for a hustle of the week?
I was just gonna tell everybody to follow us on social media. We are Pure Hustle Podcast on all socials, except we are Pure Hustle Cast on Twitter. And as always, give us a call, 619-738-1170, and you can shoot us an email at purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. Grateful for all of you. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please subscribe, hit that like button, and also click that notification bell so you know when we go live. For example, yesterday I went live. I didn't tell anybody. I just randomly went live. It was kind of lonely for a little bit, but make sure you have that bell notification so you don't miss any of our lives. And as always, grateful for all the iTunes reviews. If you haven't yet, jump on over, give that 5-star, tell people why you enjoy listening to Pure Hustle Podcast. All right, let's talk about some awesome scores.
Come on, hustlers. It's the freaking hustle of the week. Yeah. All right. Our first one comes from our Gmail, and we're not the best at getting to our Gmail, so I'm glad we found this one here. This one says, hey, longtime listener, first time reaching out. This is Thrift and Flip 319 here. I had an amazing Goodwill bins hustle the other day. I had found a high med disc in the bins, and I looked it up and saw it was selling for around $50. So I dug around for more. I ended up finding 6 single discs and 2 5-packs, as well as 8 packs of mini discs. I paid around $5 for everything and have already sold 3 of the single high MDs for $150 after one day. Holy smokes. Thanks again for all you two do, Kyle. Man, that's I mean, the bins can be great, man. When I do bins, I typically do hard goods like that. So it's not just clothes. It's not just clothes. That's for sure.
Do you remember the mini disc era? Do you remember those?
I do.
Okay, yeah. You're not too young. Like that was an interesting era, and it's interesting that people like those, especially the empty ones that you can store stuff in. And it's crazy because I remember sourcing those 5 years ago, and they weren't worth as much. So it's definitely, not only is it a hustle of the week, but it's a bolo. So thank you, Kyle, and I'm glad you got that great score. All right, this next one comes from AM2106 from the Discord. said, I meant to post this a while back, but I was waiting to make sure it stayed sold because that was our biggest sale at that point. My husband and I resell together, and we were at an estate sale. I always look at the computer software, and this one had a copy of Quicken 2014 and QuickBooks Pro 2015. These are nice because the software doesn't come with disc anymore. It's a monthly or annual subscription. Oh, it drives me crazy. Like Microsoft is like that, Adobe. So if you can,
we own nothing now. Yeah,
I know, it's just wild. So they paid $2 for Quicken and QuickBooks Pro, $2 each, and sold the Quicken pretty quickly for $124.99. And the QuickBooks Pro took a little bit longer, but eventually sold for $450 plus shipping. That's some wild numbers.
Yeah, I was at a estate sale the other day because going back to that idea of like you don't own anything anymore now. It's all just like subscription based. But yeah, you could definitely do good on software. I was at an estate sale and I saw like I had a filing cabinet just full of software. So I was super excited, but then I could kind of tell by the books he had and other things and the way these were written out and they were on like artists that these were like pirated copies of everything. Like he had like probably 400 pieces of software with like the serial numbers and everything on them. But if you can get especially unopened boxes of this hardware or the software, you're gonna do really, really well for sure.
It's
so that's,
easy looked over too. Like people just pass it up because you look, you're like 2014,
2015. Yeah.
Who wants that? So
nice but
work.
The software still works though. Same thing with like I'm not super familiar with which ones work still, but like certain of the older Photoshops, like now Photoshop is great because they keep updating it and Adobe and all of that. But again, you don't own it, right? So if you have an older copy, like you potentially have an old version that can't be necessarily updated, but if it does what you need it to do, and it's a forever copy basically. So, all right, our next one comes from Keola from the Discord. So he's a repeat hustle of the week here.
He's like a moderator on the Discord.
Yeah. Keola for sure is one of our OG listeners and one of our most active on the Discord. So every now and then I'll pick up something outside of my niche. This was definitely worth looking up. Anything new and factory sealed, and I made a habit of looking it up. I was getting skunked on all of the thrifts until I found this for $4, and I listed it for $250 and took an offer. It sold in less than a week. It was a Battlestar Galactica board game, sci-fi, by Corey something another for $200 plus shipping. Holy smokes. Yeah, Battlestar Galactica, man, what a great show. It's one of my favorites.
Is it that great? Like, is that
You've never seen it?
No, not the one with Edward James Olmos. I watched like the old one, but this board game was the one with the Edward James Olmos, like the newer one.
It's great. The new one, I mean, I haven't seen the old one, so I don't have anything to compare it to. Okay. But I remember when I was going through my teaching credential program and I was doing all my studying, I was at home like for a couple weeks, like doing studying, and whenever I got like I needed a break, I would just go and binge watch Battlestar Galactica. Man, what a great show! And I've played a couple of board games for it. I don't know if I played this one. I'd have to look up the specific. I played one that I don't think was this one, but I have played some Battlestar Galactica games.
That's pretty wild. All right, maybe I need to watch it. I'm trying to get through Deep Space Nine, but it's kind of it's every Star Trek show. It's like the first season always terrible. Everybody always like, oh, start season 2. So maybe I'll eventually get to Battlestar Galactica. So
it's a good one.
That's a good one. Okay.
All right. So my hustle of the week. Did you know, Orlando, that last month,
yes,
America beat Afghanistan in cricket?
Yeah, it was a big deal. It was a big
deal. And when I heard that, I thought of two things. One,
America.
I didn't know we had a cricket team, and two, what's cricket, right? Okay. And I'm just kidding. I know what cricket is, but here's what I think is interesting about this. So, are you familiar with the Bluey
the cartoon,
craze?
The show?
Yeah. Everybody loves Bluey. Like Bluey's like the thing. My kids love Bluey. We don't watch barely any TV shows, but Bluey's been pretty safe and pretty good. And because it's an Australian game, they play cricket and they talk about cricket quite a bit in there. Like the dad will be sitting watching cricket on TV or whatever. And so I think between America beating Afghanistan and then also Bluey kind of bringing, cricket. I don't think it's ever going to become a mainstream sport in America, but I definitely think that there's going to be an uptick in people interested in it. I spent a little bit of time in Nepal and it was on TV everywhere you went. Everybody's about cricket. And so it's a worldwide thing for sure. And when I was at one of the Amazon return stores, I saw a cricket helmet and I was like, man, this is interesting, right? And it was brand new, still in the packaging, still completely wrapped up. It hadn't even been put together, like the face mask hadn't been put on it. And so I look up the brand, and it seems to be a pretty big brand. I think it's S&G or SG. And this particular helmet sells for like 120, 110, really? Something like that new. I think I'm going to sell it as open box because I opened it to make sure it was all still good. But I still should be able to sell this for like $80 to $90 and paid $8 for it. And because I'm not sure how long it's going to take, right? Because how many people are playing cricket in America? But then again, most of the sales or people who have these helmets listed are overseas. So if someone can get it quicker, you never know, right? So we'll see. I'm interested to see whether this will go global or if this will be a USA sell. If people are like getting into little cricket teams.
No, I agree. And the funny thing is, like, cricket, it looks intense. I don't know. I need to watch it more. So, all right. So mine is it's the haul that continues on. Like, so last August I had the haul. I've talked about this haul many, many times. It's the same haul where I picked up a bunch of Game Boy Advance boxes that were empty. They had manual, and I made thousands of dollars on those. It's also the same haul where I picked up a bunch of manga and made thousands of dollars on those. Same haul I picked up a bunch of Polly Pocket, made a ton of money on the Polly Pocket. And this other toy was one of those things where I could have easily just left it. And I'm just sharing this because when you're at a garage sale, and let's say this garage sale doesn't have prices on all the items, to me that's already a good sign, unless it's a reseller. Okay. And then on top of that, you are finding good stuff. And then you go to another box and you find more good stuff. And you go to another box, you go and find more good stuff. Now, Mike and I tend to say, like, you got to move fast, right? The golden hour. You got to keep moving. But sometimes you got to stay at a garage sale as long as possible. As long as you're finding good stuff, do not leave. So this one, I showed up even before it opened. I actually helped them set up a little bit. Like, I helped them move some tarps and everything. And I showed up. It was about 6:50 in the morning. Okay. And the first thing I picked up was some yard signs. It was some Halloween yard signs. Those were actually trash. I ended up, like, after a while realizing they weren't worth much, and I got rid of them. But I found a bunch of, vintage Nintendo and PlayStation games. A bunch of resellers were there, and they bought a bunch of Nintendo games. Okay. The Game Boy Advance games, boxes, somebody almost threw away, right? The manga, some resellers were looking at them, but they didn't see the bigger picture. They didn't realize that there are whole complete sets, because, like, one book would be in one area, one book would be in another area. And then the toys were everywhere. Well, I started sourcing that at 7 a.m. I was there until 9:45 a.m. I stayed 2 hours and a half at this garage sale. But it's because I kept finding good stuff, and I kept finding good stuff, and I kept finding good stuff. And one of the items I found was amongst the toys was vintage Mr. Mike, the Play School Mr. Mike. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like the little recorder thing?
Yep.
And I found, let me see if, look, I can even show you here on the podcast on the screen, right? See that guy? Okay. And, I remember, because we're on social media, I remember people talking about, like, if you find these, they're worth money. And sure enough, I looked it up, and my model was a pretty rare model. So there's a lot of other models. There's usually it's a TS or a PS and then dash something. So, for example, there's the PS 468. There's another TS version. I'm trying to look here through eBay. Just different ones. And you have to be very careful, because you have to know which model you have, and you have to know how rare it is, so you know how much you can sell it for. So I even seen here, somebody sold one, a brand new one, sealed in plastic for $110 free shipping. They missed out on like $200. Like, that one could have easily sold for $300, but maybe they had a slow day and they just felt to sell it. Somebody sold one for $55. Okay, maybe I shouldn't mention this. I should just source this, because people are like, something. Well, I had a rare one. I had the TS. Let me see here, the TS 368, and it took a little while, right? It was last August. It's almost been a year, but people. I had a full price sale, and it was going to Brazil, and then the person canceled last minute. But I had listed at about 400. But somebody came along, and remember, I bought a bunch of stuff. So let's say if we average it out, I paid less than $1 for this. And it's sold for $240 plus ship. So I'll take that hustle of the week. I knew it was worth that much. It was one of those things where I was like, hey, I barely paid anything. I'm willing to wait for the right buyer to come along. So there you go. That is my hustle week. So thank you everyone for sharing your hustles of the week. If you're wondering how to share those, easiest way is to email us. Even though I know it takes a little bit to get to our emails, it's really easy for us because we get bombarded with emails, but all we have to type is hustle of the week in the search, and it'll show up, and you could end up on the podcast. And in other ways, if you're in our Discord, we're always commenting, checking out. And there's a lot of hustle of the weeks that we never mention on the podcast that are pretty awesome that are found in the Discord. All right, one other thing that is pretty awesome is American Bubble Boy. So the other day, I needed some bubble wrap. I was running low. And since I'm in a location that's pretty close, I think they have like a warehouse in Madera, which is about 2 hours away. I ordered next day shipping, and guess what? I ended up getting it within the next day. It was great. And they're actually running sales this summer, so if you haven't checked them out, check out American Bubble Boy and use our link below. If you want to get 5% off the My Go-To tape, you can also use our code Pure Hustle and get that 5% off. It's already super discounted, and it is free shipping, so check out American Bubble Boy. All right, let's talk about shipping now. This is the worst part of reselling while you're traveling. This is why we kept it towards the end, in case some people have already checked out. So, what are your thoughts about shipping on the road?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely couldn't hurt, especially if you get an item that you can take pictures of, list, and sell right away. Like if it's a hot item. It prevents the problem of having to store the items and ship them back to your house or carry them back to your house. So it's not a bad idea. I mean, I kind of almost think about it in some ways of like we've talked about, where some people will go into Walmarts or Targets and they'll list items before they even buy them. And if they sell, then they buy them. So, I mean, you're kind of taking, you're kind of hoping that an item will sell. I don't know. I think it would just depend on how long you're going and what you're doing. Like if you're going with the intent, like I know you've done trips where you're doing shopping for
Amazon,
Black Friday or for Christmas, and you're doing Amazon, right? So you're traveling, you're hitting all the Targets along a route, and then you're going back to your hotel room and you're shipping items out from there. Sometimes it's right to the Amazon warehouse, right? So I think there's a case to be made for doing that. Especially if, again, like we talked about, like getting those drafts going, it doesn't hurt. Like maybe if you got extra time, you're on the road, especially now, it's so easy to remove backgrounds and make a picture look good. Like you used to have to have a photo booth, like some kind of thing set up. Now, I mean, really, you could just take a picture in the back of your car and then just remove some backgrounds. It looks really sharp. You list it. And if it sells while you're out, now, one of the things that you got to consider when you do that is, do I have all the stuff that I need to ship this? Because then if you're stuck going to a Walmart and buying a tape gun or buying tape and then buying boxes and it might not be as worth it. But again, if you're somewhere for a while, or if you just say, hey, I'm going to throw a couple rolls of tape and some common sized boxes in the back of my car while I'm traveling, if it sells, it sells. It doesn't hurt because that's one less thing you're having to worry about when you get home.
No, I agreed. And here's the thing. eBay has actually made it easy, right? So if you do pick up items, like let's say this last trip, I sourced a bunch of Blaze trucks, like the little monster trucks. Remember the Netflix show that they're like discontinued? They're worth money. I bought a bunch of them. And I actually did list them. I listed them in the basement. I was saying, I got to tell you, I love Midwest basements. They're like so cozy and nice. Like it was beautiful where I stayed. And I just, they had I think it was like a burgundy carpet and they had some wallpaper. But I was able to put the Blaze items. I was able to take pictures of all of them, ran them through Photo Room. And sure enough, remove the background. You couldn't tell it whether I did it in a light box or whether it was right there. And I listed them. And if they sold, the annoying part would have been maybe going to a dollar store and picking up a couple of bubble wrap, envelopes, whatever, or maybe picking up a little bit of bubble wrap. But eBay has the QR codes now that you don't even have to print a shipping label. You can just go to the post office and they'll ship it out for you. Now, I'm not saying that's what you need to do, right? But if that's something you want to do, you can do that. When I was doing Amazon FBA, it was really nice. I brought a label printer with me. And my MacBook. Remember when those good old days when I brought in the huge laser jet printer on those strips?
Ridiculous. Just a little ridiculous.
That was ridiculous. I still laugh about those days because that was crazy. Like, what was I thinking? That was before I got a thermal printer. That was crazy. But if you have a thermal printer, it's pretty mobile. It's pretty easy. And I was able to do a lot of shipments of FBA because all I needed was my MacBook, All I needed was my thermal printer. Now, it was not Bluetooth, so I had to have the USB connection, but it was really simple, right? I just had to go pick up some boxes. Actually, when I was sourcing for Amazon, I didn't bring in any supplies. When I remember I was flying into Colorado, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, all these different states. I just bought the supplies while I was there. So you can do that too. But, you know, it's possible. If it's something you want to do, it is possible. Now, this is something that people don't think about. But if you put your store on vacation mode in a way that you're still making sales and you're going to come back home and there's going to be a bunch of packages that you have to make, not make, but you have to package, make sure you have all those shipping supplies beforehand. Because what happens is, let's say you don't, and you got like 30 or 40 items that you have to ship out. And, you know, you wake up, you're like, oh, I'll get to it. And then you start packing. You're like, oh, man, I'm out of bubble wrap. I'm out of tape. I'm out of boxes. You may lose another hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And then you may not even get to the post office on time, right? So make sure, I'm speaking out of personal experience, okay? I've had this happen many times where I was like, oh, I'm good to go. And then I start packing. I'm like, wait, I have no more bubble wrap. Wait, I don't have this box that I need. I don't have any more tape, whatever it is. Make sure you take care of that because you don't want to end up having to shop for supplies. When you get back, you want to have that settled away. Now, Mike, do you give yourself an extra day when you get back to ship? Like, when you change your vacation mode, your shipping and handling?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, typically I'm not gone for 15 days. There have been times where it's been that long. But again, you have that amount of time. So if I know I'm going to be back on Monday, I just might set my away time to like Tuesday or Wednesday. Yeah. And then when I get back, I'll end it, right? So that way sales come in. But then it gives me that flexibility that I have some extra time to ship out items. And sometimes people get stuff earlier, right? If they don't think it's going out until Wednesday and it ends up going out Monday night, hey, you got a happy customer. So it doesn't hurt to utilize as much of that 15 days as possible. Now, I wouldn't give myself 5 extra days, right? But an extra day is very useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, an extra day because, again, when you're returning from a trip, a lot of times there's other things going on. You're trying to unpack your stuff. You're trying to get back into the swing of things. And so, yeah, giving yourself that extra flexibility is very, very useful. It's going to make sure that you've got happy customers. Things are getting out on time because there's nothing worse than getting back, having 10 items to ship. You're trying to find items. Maybe you don't know where they are. Maybe you miss the window of getting to the post office like you were talking about earlier. And so, yeah, giving yourself just that extra flexibility, it's, I'm not a big fan. Like I know you've said many times on the podcast, kind of the opposite of the under promise and over deliver, right? You kind of just said like, what's your saying? Under promise. I don't remember how you said it exactly, but
under promise, over deliver. Yeah.
But you have a different take on that where like, especially when it comes to like listing your items where you like, well, say something's like really terrible.
No, I don't, but I don't try to sell the item. Like I let the item sell itself. Like right. I don't go like excellent condition or great use condition. Like I won't do any of that.
So you got that kind of like under promise, over deliver. And the same thing can be true with that. You know, you're going to end up with a happier customer if you ship something out earlier than they think. But if they have to wait another day, especially if they're like, man, I'm already waiting 4 days for this item. Because you got to imagine not every item is going to be sold on that first day that you're gone, right? So some of those items, people really aren't waiting 10 or 15 days. They might only be waiting 3 extra days.
Yeah, agreed.
But if they already had to wait an extra 3 or 4 days for that item to ship, and then you're adding another day on top of that, that's when you run into issues, right? So that's when it'd be good to extend it out an extra day. And then if you can get home and get it all shipped out, then it's just icing on the cake.
Yeah. And the last point I want to bring on here with the shipping is make sure to check your defects after, because what ends up happening, sometimes you'll sell something and you'll put the store on vacation mode and then the person pays for it. And so, because eBay still hasn't fixed the automatic payment issue, like you'll accept an offer and it sells on a Thursday, and then on Friday you're on vacation mode and you head out of town, and then they pay for it on Friday. Well, what ends up happening is it'll put your shipment overdue, and it may put your shipment over to due 10 days. Right. In that situation, for example, that just happened to me. I had to message the person. I'm like, hey, just let you know, this sold on Thursday, but I didn't get payment until Friday, and I won't be able to ship this out for another 10 days. In that case, I did message the person. They're like, oh, no worries, no big deal. But on eBay side, I ended up getting a defect on that. And actually, I ended up this last time, I got defects on 3 items. 3 items because it showed that tracking showed late shipment. But the reality is the items were not paid for before I went on vacation. They sold before they went on vacation, but they weren't paid for until after I went on vacation, which eBay, easy fix. First fix, just fix the auto payments, okay? If you can't do that, at least fix this ability. But I appealed them all, and I just said, hey, by the way, this item was shipped on time. Payment was received after I left, and it's been fixed. And so usually eBay is pretty good about it, especially if it's in the messages. But make sure you check your defects because you never know. You may have 2 or 3 defects from this time because you were like, oh, everything's all good. But it can hurt you if you're not careful. So be aware of that. All right. Hopefully everything here helped you out. Hopefully you're able to travel this summer. Hopefully you're able to enjoy some time off with friends and family, and are also able to make money on the road. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Late. Peace.